Hi guys. Just trying to get to this video that I told you all that I was going to do um, on the eye. So I've already finished doing most of the corner of the eye, and I think you can see on this video versus me trying to do it online in the Zoom thing how subtle the nuances are between all the different muscles and things in the corner of that eye. Let me fold this up just a little bit so we can get a little better look at it. So if you look at mine versus the digital photograph, there's a couple of differences, but I tried to keep it as close to the original as I can. And now that I look at this again, I can probably go back in here on this eye around these highlights, and I am using a 6B, just regular pencil, drawing pencil. I'm going to go back in and put some darks in there. So when you deal with highlights, a lot of times you have to put some very, very dark, light or very good darks by the highlights to make those things pop out. So now that you can see that, I kind of got a little carried away there with that one little black spot that I'm going to go back in. I don't really like that. So I'm just going to take my kneaded eraser, make that little point on there. I'm going to go back in, lift that back out because I don't really like that. And it's still there, but it'll be okay. You can also see in this that there's some little horizontal lines of shading or kind of medium value that go in that. So I'm going to try to go in there and put those in. Probably going to change to an HB or a number 2 pencil on that one. You can also use your mechanical pencil the whole time. But if you notice, I'm just barely touching the paper with this number 2 pencil. And so then I'm trying to get the same things I've got going on down here in the reference photo as what we've got going on up here. And I can see this needs to be a little darker down here too as I look at it. So that's kind of how to do those little nuances that we have going on. If you go over here and you look at the eye itself in the iris, there's lots of little things that are happening. And what I like to do is I really went in here and tried to get all those white shapes, those highlight shapes. I tried to get all of those so they matched real well. I'm gonna fold my reference photo here again so we can take a look at it. So if you look at both of these, I didn't go in and put these eyelash shadows or reflections on there yet. I just tried to get this really the right shape. So even as I look at this again, I'm going to redraw this because I think that needs a little bit more of a squared off spot. And then I'm going to go back in with my eraser again, and I'm going to take that line out that I had there. The thing that you need to remember a lot of times on these is that it's just a tremendous amount of looking and how can I replicate that shape to my drawing from the visual image or the reference photo that you have. So now I'm looking at this shape. I know I have this shape down here. Now that I re-look at that, I don't really like that. I'm going to do what I told you not to do, and I'm just going to totally get rid of it. Start over. So if I look at this, I see that this little blunt spot right here lines up to this little rightmost part of this little Star Trek shape or a little triangle shape. So I'm going to go down here so far, and then I'm just going to redraw this little shape in a better shape than what I had before. Sometimes I feel like that if you draw these things a little big and then you can come in it with those dark values, then it keeps the highlight truer. because I can always make it smaller. I can't necessarily make it bigger a lot of times. But I've already went in here, and you can do this with a softer pencil. I have a 9B that's hanging out over here, and that's what I'm gonna probably just go ahead and fill this iris totally in, as dark as I can get it on the paper without physically damaging the paper. If you go over it too many times, then you're gonna damage the paper. Again, look what I'm doing with the butt of my hand. It's always on some sort of a cover sheet, whether it's this reference photo that you have or it's a plain white piece of paper or something, but I always have that on here. So what I do know about this iris or this pupil is that this thing is totally dark. So I already went over it once. Now I'm going to go over it again, and I'm going to make sure that this thing is totally blackened in. And the other thing that I know about these highlights is the edges are extremely sharp because it is a reflection. So I don't want any fuzzy type things going on here. There's a little notch out of this right here that I'm going to go ahead and put in. And then the rest of this is pretty straight. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a look at, starting with the iris part, I'm going to take a look at this. And this to me seems like it's not as dark as the iris, or as the pupil part, but it's just pretty doggone dark, and then it gets lighter as it comes down to the bottom of the eye. So what I also know is that our eyes are transparent. So when the light hits our eye, so let's say for instance if the light is hitting from the top of this eye, it's lit both directions, but this is always going to be lighter down here because this reflected light is going to go through the front of your eye that's clear, and it's going to hit this colored part back here. So that's why this shows up as lighter down here at the bottom. But I'm going to start here, and this is just very delicate. At no point, if you find yourself trying to rush to get this thing done, put it down, step away from it, because there's no part of these really tight, fussy drawings that you should try to rush through anything, because that's when things get, your marks get really quick, and it's just not the feel for these really fussy, tight drawings like this. So I'm using very, very small marks with my pencil. And I'm just going to run this thing. All the way down here. And when I do this, I'm going over, I'm starting a row like this. Then I'm going to go back over the edge, and I'm going to blend those in. Right now I'm on the top of a wood table. Sometimes those wood marks, especially with this thinner paper, are going to come through there. In a perfect world, I'm going to put a drawing board underneath this that's totally smooth. So here's my drawing board. I just barely noticed that. When I set up all this camera, I wasn't thinking about, there we go. So here we are back where we're at. And so now, I gotta get this so that the reflection's not on there. Now I'm not gonna get that wood grain from underneath there. So that was a problem. So you always have to know what your surfaces are underneath there. I was starting to see those, and I don't like that. So again, I'm looking at this. I'm also coming down here. I'm spending a lot of time looking at my reference. I know that this thing goes from light to dark in this corner. And again, I'm using a 9B. You can use your mechanical pencil if you want to. And obviously, the harder I press with this thing, the darker it gets. And that's the main thing in pencil drawing, is it's just learning how pressure and release works on these drawings, or how to make the value. I don't want to move that much because it gets the glare there. So I think what I'm going to do for a little while here during this demonstration is I'm just going to go through a lot of these things on the eye. Now, the other thing I want you to notice is that if I want to grab part of this, if you look at this really soft value here, this can't be a line that just stops right there. It's got to be super, super soft, and you have to have a really light hand on those really soft values. This is white. This is not white. It's one of the big things that people make a mistake on teeth and eyes, is leaving things totally white. It cannot be totally white. It has to have a value shift in there in order to make it look like a real eye. So, especially on this, if you look at the side of this iris, there's just a tiny bit of fuzzy little halo that goes on there. So, with a pencil that is a harder lead, so I've got an H, so you can use a 2H, 3H, whatever. If you've got a regular H, that's fine. A lot of times I will make a little beveled spot on the side of my pencil so that here's that. Let me find this. There's my beveled spot that I just kind of took my pencil and I made it so that it just has a little flat spot, so I'm not getting a totally sharp tip. And then I'm just gonna very gently, sometimes I just don't need to make as many marks. Gonna very gently go over the top of this. So these things are extremely fussy. Just right at the edge of this. So it just gives that illusion of just a little bit of fuzz. I'm going to do the same thing. If you look at this eyelid, I got a little darker line right there that I'm going to try to get to go in there really, really nicely with this harder pencil. I took some time to look at this and make sure that I knew where this stopped. So this line runs along pretty good right here, and then it's gonna stop right there. And it's gonna fade out. So this is just like the shattered image drawing. This is medium dark, gets lighter, lighter, little medium dark, and then fades out. So this is medium dark, lighter, lighter. It gets a little darker in here. I'm gonna add some, and then I'm gonna fade that out. That's what you have to do to this whole eye project, is you have to look at it, and then you have to decide, hey, where's this going? What does this look like? How can I make this, my drawing, look like this image? And it's all tiny, tiny little things. And that's why it takes me so long to do, and here I am using this H pencil on that. So try to keep your mind around that too. If you're gonna go back to something that's dark, make sure you're picking these softer lead pencils, the B pencils, to do some things like that if you see something that kind of needs to be filled in. And then the last thing I'm going to really touch on today, before I put this on time lapse, and I'm going to work on this for probably another 40-45 minutes, and you can kind of see how much I cover in 45 minutes in kind of a time lapse fashion. But if I look at this, and I look at the difference between this really soft line here and this hard line I have, I'm gonna fix that just with the eraser. I don't want you to use your blending Tortillon on this. I want you to use this eraser because it keeps your highlights true. So I'm just gonna really gently pull that out. See how that softened that and it made it look more like this? This is actually a little darker than that, but I'd actually kind of like to see that a little lighter than I would totally dark. So I'm gonna switch over to time lapse here, and then I'm gonna work on this for about 45 minutes. I might pop in a time or two and tell you a little bit about what I'm doing, but I'm just gonna work here. You can watch it on time lapse.